we need to find a way to increase the distance between the stressor or the stimulus or the event which is happening in our environment and our response to it. And the longer we can draw that gap out between that stimulus, the event, and the circumstance, the stressor, the longer that gap is, the more emotional stability we have.
That was Adrian Spear. In this episode of Me and My Health Up, we'll be discussing stress and anger management with Adrian, who is a specialist in this area. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher, a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. So here we have Adrian. Welcome, Adrian. How are you today?
Great, thank you, Anthony. I'm very good. What about yourself?
Fantastic. It's really nice to have a bit more freedom back. You know, we can certainly venture out a bit more, and I've been getting to the gym recently and really enjoyed getting back into the gym and certainly seeing the businesses open and, you know, being vibrant again. So really pleasing. How about yourself, Adrian?
Yeah, it's been a long, tough road for many of us. I am also in that category where we were in a LGA of concern, as they like to call it. And then, of course, that meant that everything that I had to do was online. But also not being able to go anywhere, not being able to do anything. I tended to bury myself in work, I think.
Yeah, I think you're not alone there. I think people found themselves working more hours during this lockdown period, simply, you know, from working from home and not a lot of else to do. You know, you can only go outside for certain reasons. You can't go and catch up with friends. So, yeah, I think you're not alone in that sense. Just before we really get into it, I'm really keen for you to share with the listeners how you have arrived at what you're doing today.
Well, mate, that's a long story, but I'll endeavour to cut it as short as I can. I think it started back in 2006. Now, in 2006, I arrived back to Australia. I think it was my 40th birthday. I arrived in Australia, and I had $200 in my pocket, and that was it. I just spent the last 10 years in Germany, married a German girl, and had a business partnership over there, which was extremely successful. But near the end, things started to fall to pieces, and the relationship with my German wife came to an abrupt end, and also the ending of the business partnership. I returned back to Australia very, very depressed, even though I didn't want to believe it. I was drinking large volumes of alcohol, even though I didn't think I had a problem, and a chain smoker. And this was the result of just the stressors, how I allowed the stressors around me to affect me. So that started a process of somehow digging myself out of the hole. And a good friend suggested that I go and sit and do this long meditation course, which I kind of never thought I'd do. But I said, okay, I'll do it, no problem, because he basically said to me, he said, mate, you're all messed up, which I didn't believe, but he said, you're all messed up, you need help. And so I went off this meditation course, and this was a 10-day Noble Silence meditation course, and it was at a centre called Vipassana. That's up in the Blue Mountains. So I sat and did this 10-day course, and for the first 6 days, I absolutely hated it. I mean, everything they were telling me to do, the techniques and all that I was trying to do, nothing worked. I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone. I wasn't allowed to read anything. They took my phone, my wallet, my keys off me, and if they hadn't have done that, I would have been long gone. But on the 7th day, it started to work, and then I loved it. And then I was able to stay at the centre for 4 days, help them around the centre in the kitchen and all that, in the gardens and that. And then I did the next 10-day course, and then I stayed for another 4 days. I did another 10-day course thereafter. And I came out of this whole experience for about 45 days all up of meditating from 4:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night for 10 days straight. I came out of that whole experience no longer depressed, no longer dependent on alcohol, and not smoking anymore. And I was suddenly I found a new lease of life, and that got me on this process of meditating every day. And for my surfing, I decided to start to do some yoga, and I was sitting there doing some yoga, and I was sitting there meditating when I before the yoga class started, and the yoga teacher said to me, "Oh, so you meditate, do you?" And I said, "Yeah, I meditate every day." And she said, "Would you like to run an 8-week course for me?" And I'd never taught anything like that before in my life, and I said to her, "Yeah, I'll do that." I didn't think much of it. 6 weeks later, she came to me I think it was 4 days before the course was supposed to start. And she said, "We got 20 participants coming. Are you ready?" And I thought, "Oh my God, my goodness me. I don't even have anything ready. I haven't got a program. I haven't thought about it. I've totally forgotten about it, about the conversation." So I wrote the first lesson for this 8-week program. I started, I think it was 4 days before that started. And then every week before the next lesson, I wrote the next program for that lesson. So that's how, and I remember my first 8-week course, that was very popular. And then that just snowballed, and I continued to do this 8-lesson program on and on and on for quite a number of years. But then I noticed that people were coming to me at the end of the lesson, and they wanted to talk to me for about an hour thereafter about their concerns. I'm having this trouble, and this is, all this, and my kids and my husband and all that kind of stuff. So I found myself just listening to and offering a couple of suggestions. And then someone said to me, "Why don't you go and get a diploma in counselling or coaching or something like that?" So I did, and a diploma in counselling. So then I found that I was more effective helping people one-on-one than in a group setting. And I've been doing that for the last, say, 2 or 3 years now. So it's still early days, but I've suddenly fallen into this groove where I started to help quite a few people with anger and stress, and found that they were both very related. And now I seem to be now just helping people with anger and with stress issues. So all these other things like anxiety, depression, relationship concerns and all that, I find that if I can work on the stress, work on the anger, and a lot of this stuff does seem to help these other issues which come about. So yeah, so basically I went from, I think, rock bottom, broken rock bottom, and it took me that to wake up to myself and suddenly realise that there's you need to look after yourself first to be able to help others. But then I realised that I can help people get out of situations and difficult situations in their lives, just through what I've learned through my own practice, through self observation, and it's been a great journey. So that's basically it. From 2006 to now, I never thought, if someone said to me in 2005, in 2021 you'll be doing this, I would have laughed at them. But there you go. That's where I am now.
Yeah, what an incredible journey you've been on. And I really wanted to talk more about this. You had these addictions to help, deal with all the issues that you're going through at the time. And then you went on this meditation, this, 45-day meditation course. And then all those addictions just went away. And you've just mentioned this whole thing of the power of self-awareness, self-reflection. So what was it during that period of time that you think that was that light bulb switch that just dissipated, or that, reliance on alcohol, on that, on any other addictions you had at the time?
I think of all of it was because you only had your mind to work on. So it was only you, that you didn't talk to anyone else. You didn't you didn't, so there wasn't any other avenue for you to occupy your mind. Like I said, your phone was taken off you. There was no reading material, no contact with the outside world, no talking at all. So it was just you, even though you sat in a hall with, say, 80 other people, it was just you and just focusing on your mind the whole time. The absence of these toxins also was a contributing factor. So I couldn't get my hands on alcohol. I couldn't get my hands on cigarettes. So that was a factor to it. But the main reason why it works so well is just the constant everyday just sitting with yourself and your mind, your body and your mind talking to each other, your body telling your mind, the body's sore, I don't want to sit anymore, I've had enough of this, and your mind having to deal with it. It was really this argument, this constant fight between what the body wanted. The body wanted to lie down, and the mind said, no, you're going to sit cross-legged. And this is hurting, your knee's hurting, I don't care, I'm going to sit here and do this. It's kind of like this. It was this constant fight in the beginning that then became much easier as it progressed, and then these addictions that I had, I found out that once the mind becomes strong enough, then it can overpower the body's urges for these substances, which in turn is the body's normality. So when you're doing something for a long period of time, or you're drinking alcohol for a long period of time, or drinking coffee or smoking cigarettes, your body gets used to it. Your body sees that as normal. So then when the mind suddenly decides, no, I'm not going to do that anymore, then the body fights the mind and wants you and sends signals to the brain, oh, go and have that drink, go and have that cigarette, go and have that cup of coffee. And you find that the mind weakens, the body wins, the body gets what it wants. So it was the isolation and the pure that you only had your mind to work on, and just to prove that the mind is just so powerful, and that's what made the difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so you really got on top of the mind game, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
basically, yeah.
you became the master of your own mind, master of your own destiny. And I'm just thinking there's certainly people that I see in practice that are really struggling with binge eating, are struggling with that alcohol, at home, because it's sort of the way they want to wrap up the end of the day. They can't go anywhere or can't see anyone. So they've been in this habit now that's becoming very, habitual in terms of just keep doing it, repetition. So what do you suggest for those people that are, in this sort of cycle that they don't like? They're sort of feeling a bit out of control and they really want to get on top. Well, given that we're opening up, they're probably wanting to get fitter again, healthier again, stop binge eating, stop binge drinking. How do you suggest people break these sort of cycles of bad habits?
Well, everything that we do, we're humans, human beings, and even all creatures live out of habit. All right. So we like habit, but habit can be our best friend, but also our worst enemy. So we need to be able to, if we want to put things in place, if we want to change things, and like especially coming out of lockdown, I believe the most powerful way of doing that is to firstly to sit down and to say, right, what do I want? What do I want? And then look at yourself and say, all right, so set a couple of goals, and we all know, we've all heard about SMART goals and all that type of stuff. So you've got to set a couple of goals, but then you've got to reinforce those goals. So you've got to have that goal in front of you every day, and basically, if I can take a leaf out of my book, is that you look at, I have my goals and I have it written on a piece of paper, and I look at them every morning. Every morning I read them. Every morning I look at them and I say, well, this is what I want. This is what I want. This is where I want to go. And then so you act on them. You see them and you act on them. And then, but that's the power of it. You need to convince you need to convince not just the conscious mind, but also the subconscious mind. You need to impregnate the subconscious mind with the goals so that they become a part of the whole body. And then you can move forward, and then it's a lot easier to move forward and form new habits, and to leave those terrible habits behind you, I guess, of binge eating and sitting around, loafing around because you can't go anywhere. And so it's basically sitting down, writing down what you want, and then putting it into place, putting a plan into place so that you can actuate and you can bring about what you want. And that's the best way forward, I reckon.
And just, in terms of what we've been through, it's been a really hard period. People have had different experiences going through this lockdown and this disconnection with family, loved ones, friends, and, different situations around job and income. And so everyone's had a different experience. But overall, there seems to be general stress because some people have really been super busy with work and been working extensive long hours, so they're stressed. And other people don't have a lot of work on and worried about the future, and so they're stressed. So there seems to be this, no matter which situation you're in, generally people are sort of feeling at that stress tipping point. And given, you have this expertise in stress and anger management, what are some tips you could give those people that are really feeling anxious and stressed out and nearly burnt out at this point in time?
It's an interesting one. When you really think about it, we have stressors in our environment, and what we need to do is we need to be able to have our mind as in such a state that we don't allow these negative influences into our mind. And this is easier said than done. It really is a process. It really is a process of being able to sit and not react to the negatives in your environment. So take for example, something comes up in the environment and we react straight away to it. And lots of times we react negatively to it, and that creates a chemical reaction in the body, which lots of times sends us into this the stress mode, which is called the fight or flight response. And you may not notice this, but what it does is that it affects us in certain ways, that it depletes our immune system, and it's not healthy for the body. So what we need to do, regardless of what's going on, regardless if we're too busy or we're not busy enough and we're concerned about the future and all that, we need to always take time to calm ourselves down. And I always tell my clients and my students that we need to find a way to increase the distance between the stressor or the stimulus or the event which is happening in our environment and our response to it. And the longer we can draw that gap out between that stimulus, the event, and the circumstance, the stressor, the longer that gap is, the more emotional stability we have. See, that allows us, we have a stressor, let's say we're thinking about, even in a thought, just say we're thinking about, I don't, I haven't got any money because I haven't got the job because of COVID or whatever, I need to find work. And that creates a stress. So that's a stressor. It's not externally, it's internally, but we're thinking about it. So what we have to do, we have to get a mechanism there so we can say, all right, that's okay. I understand that money is important, but now I need to not react negatively towards it, but firstly allow the logical brain time to catch up. Because what happens is every thought starts at the back of the brain, goes through the emotional brain, where we many times react to it, and then it ends up in the logical brain, the prefrontal cortex at the front. So we have to allow time for the logical brain to catch up and try not to react emotionally to the thoughts we are having, to the events which are going on around us. And that, realistically, with all stressors that cause us concern, that is the most important, that we allow time for the logical brain to catch up and for us to think in positive, more constructive ways instead of just blindly reacting negatively towards the situation. And if we can do that, regardless of what it is, regardless if it's too much work, if it's not enough work, if it's I haven't seen the family, whatever it is, if we can allow that gap, that time, enough time there for us to process it and respond positively towards that concern, then our stress levels lower and then we feel better as a person. And that's realistically, with everything that goes on, that's all we need to do. But the trick is, how do you go about it?
And so I was just thinking that because I recently had a relationship coach or a soulmate coach, Miranda Claire, on the podcast, and she mentioned this 10-second rule in terms of having that pause or creating that gap so you can respond in a more resourceful way. Have you got any tips about what people can do in that gap as to, like a generally, like, people don't like that silence, but, I totally understand the logic behind pausing and allowing the logical brain to catch up to the emotional brain so that you can make a more rational behavior or, respond in a more rational way. Have you got any tips around that?
Right. Okay. Yep. Quite good tips I have. If you're dealing with something in the moment, like, for example, it's an event or you're dealing with a behavior or something you have to react straight away. Many times there's a cognitive behavioral therapy trick that's called, it's not a trick, it's a therapy. I shouldn't call it a trick, goodness me. But it's called thought stopping. All right, so thought pops into your mind. This person I don't like because they're acting aggressively towards me, and or you're going to get aggressive yourself in retaliation to whatever's going on, and then and all you do is it's basically thought stopping. So you just go stop. So you can either say stop, just like silently to yourself, or even better is to say it out loud, not to the other person, but to you. You just got to be careful you're not in the middle of a supermarket or in the middle of a restaurant and say stop, and everyone turn around and go, what's this guy talking about? It's crazy. So that's called thought stopping. So what you do is that brings about awareness that you're going to react in a negative way, or you're going to react in a way that you don't like. So that's the awareness side of things, and then your life coach there, her 10-second pause, that's the follow on from the stop. So the stop is first, I'm aware of it, I'm going to react with anger, or I'm going to get stressed out or whatever. And the next part is the count to 10, which allows you time to catch up, the logical brain time to catch up. But I also add in there some deep breathing. So I'll have people breathe in slowly, say for 5 seconds in, and then 5 seconds out, and that's count of 1. All right, and then you've got the next in out breath is 2, and then you do 10 that way, and that's probably about a couple of minutes worth of breathing. So that's a long 10 count, but in saying that, it gives your mind enough time to calm and for the logical brain to say, yeah, you feel better now, you'll be able to handle this now. Don't bite their head off, just calm down, right? And you process it in a more logical sense. They're just 2 quick ways of doing it, but in the longer sense, and this is what I've been practicing since 2006, is that I meditate every day. So I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yes, I'm crazy, I'm mad and all that type of stuff. But I get up at 4 o'clock every morning and I'll sit down for an hour and I'll meditate. And what I do while I'm sitting there is that when I noticed a sensation come up from within the framework of the body, like I feel an itch, for example, then I won't scratch it, right? So I'll sit there and I'll say, all right, that's the body wanting me to scratch the itch. So what I do, I just sit there and I continue to say, okay, I'm not going to focus on the itch. I'm not going to react to it. I'm just going to sit there. So then what happens is the itch becomes louder and louder, so it increases in intensity. But then I say to myself also, no, I'm not going to. And then it gets the intensity gets more and more and more and more until you almost can't bear it anymore. But if I don't react to it, and this is the same with if anyone does this, if you don't react to it and you don't scratch the itch, it eventually goes away. And it eventually goes away because the body then basically, the body's been sending signals to the mind, scratch the itch, scratch the itch, scratch the itch, suddenly says, you're not listening to me. And then just turns it off and says, oh, we're not going to worry about that. I'm not going to worry about that incident because you're not listening to me anyway. And that works. So what that does, when you're doing stuff like this in the meditation, that actually draws out that gap that I was talking about, draws out that gap in between the stimulus and your response to that stimulus. And the longer you can go without reacting towards sensations from within the framework of the body, the more emotional stability you create in the outside world. And then when you get good at this, from doing this from within the body, and then someone comes at you and says something which would normally push your buttons, then you find yourself just going, that's just your opinion. And that you don't react to it. You don't react to it negatively because you've trained your mind in the meditation not to do so. But I'm not saying here that this means if a bus is going to come and run you over, you don't get out of the way. All right? No. The body still, if there is danger, if there's a threat of you being killed, your body will react. It will take charge and it will get you out of the way. And we want that still. We want to stay alive. That's the body's mechanism. And that's a part of the stress response. That's a part of the anger. That's the whole thing. The body, anger, and the stress response is designed to keep you alive. Worked in this when a saber-toothed tiger was chasing you, in the caveman days. Not so good these days, but that's the reason why we have it, to keep us alive. And unfortunately, a lot of us use it in a negative, aggressive sense these days. But that's it. Yeah. So that's it. Increasing the gap, meditation, not reacting to the itch. Also works with pain, discomfort, pain. I've had it where I've been sitting meditating, I haven't moved the body for over an hour, just not an inch, not a single inch for over an hour. Probably I got up to about an hour and a half, and then you'll feel discomfort, then you'll feel pain, and then after a while, if you continue not to react to the pain, it also dissipates and goes away. So that's all about increasing that distance between stimulus and response, and that's the key.
Yeah, fantastic tips, Adrian, there. I liken your, this whole thing around the itch and just, you're recognizing it's there, you're acknowledging it's there, but, there's that element of pausing and, that resistance. And so there's a sense of struggle. And I really picked that up when you mentioned your story about heading up to the Blue Mountains, and that initial start to the meditation retreat was such a struggle for you, and you're just going bonkers. But then it seems like after all struggles, there's peace, and it's very much like that storm and then the calm. Like it's the whole environment's all whipped up. There's ferocious winds, the waves are big, and then it's all peaceful afterwards. So. And that's probably very much like when someone responds in anger, they're like the storm, and the receiving person that's well under control of their mind, like yourself, or the meditators are very much able to respond to that storm with calm, and that would also help the person that's responding with anger for their logical brain to catch up with their emotional brain, that 10 seconds or that pause that you allow. it also allows them. So it actually really helps with the whole situation, right?
Yeah, it does. It see what it there's a Buddha saying there that you can't fight hatred with hatred. You can only fight it with love, and it's the same with aggression. There's no communication when two people are aggressive towards each other. There's only noise, and that's just with arguments. For example, partners arguing with each other, and there's no real communication there. And the more that one tries to prove the other one wrong, the more defensive that person becomes, and the more determined that person becomes that they're not wrong, they're right. And this is an interesting way of doing it. So it's really important, and this is one of the things about anger. You just touched on anger there. Is that I also teach people about becoming more assertive in their communication styles, especially in relationships where there is anger and there's quite a few arguments and stuff like that, or people feel they're not being treated fairly. Whereas to teach people to remain calm, not react, not aggressively, not being aggressive, not being negative, not getting stressed about it, but just remaining calm, but assertively telling the other person, or telling the other person the way that they want to be treated. And it really does. If we can learn just a couple of skills to communicate with each other a bit better, we wouldn't have any anger relationships. We wouldn't have problems in relationships. And anger wouldn't really be brought into the picture. We wouldn't have these problems and domestic violence and stuff like that, because people would be able to communicate how they want to be treated, and and there wouldn't be these angry outbursts. So I strongly believe that.
Absolutely. It generally, hostility or problems arise from lack of communication, and that's where you're coming from, is in a sense that making sure that you communicate in a way that's not hostile so that it's received. Because as you said, when anger just fuels anger, or hatred fuels hatred. And I think in that situation, nothing's heard. Everything's just one party trying to talk over the other party. And you often see that when people are disputing, is that the voice tone or the volume just keeps elevating on either side until it gets to they're screaming at one another. I just wanted to get back to the point, how you said, in terms of how you've got in control of your mind through regular meditation practice. You start at 4 a.m., you do it for an hour religiously every day, and it really helps you deal with stressors that come throughout the day. You're better able to respond to stressors because of this prophylactic or proactive meditation that you regularly do. For some people, they find meditation such a struggle, like you did when you first started. Have you got any tips to help people to get started on meditation?
Yeah, there's so many these days. There's so many different types of meditation. There's so many teachers out there. There's so many apps that you can get on your phone for meditation. Look, it really does boil down to being firstly making a commitment to the practice, I think. And then what you have to do is you have to be able to teach the mind. Or firstly, you need to calm the mind down. What does it say? Teach. You got to calm the mind down, because when we first try and meditate, and probably everyone's probably, people that don't meditate and they've tried it, they sit down and then they close their eyes just start to close their eyes. All right, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to focus on breath now. And then the mind is absolutely racing. You are thinking of everything imaginable what you have to do, and you're thinking about everything in the past, what's going on, what's happened, and that person shouldn't have said that, and I shouldn't have done this, and I should have done that differently. And you know what I mean? Like, and this is the problem with meditating, is that the mind is what's called in a high beta brainwave state. So the mind's fully functioning, it's acting, it's basically you have hundreds of thoughts coming in, and you have no correlation to why they're coming in, and you can't really control it. They're coming in here and this one, and you'll stop that one, and this one will start, and so it's a very agitated way of thinking. But funnily enough, is that when we're going about our normal day, this is basically we're in high beta brainwave conditions. So, and the reason why most people fail with meditating is because they sit down from this high beta brainwave state, and that's how I'm going to meditate now. And then they just sit there and their mind races the whole time, and then they get up going, shit, that didn't work. Stupid meditation. Anyway, so the objective is, and I have a technique, and you know what, I've been practicing it for so many years, and I can't remember where I got it from, but it works a treat, and it has been proven to work in that area by putting an electroencephalogram on the the bit electrodes, the electrodes on the brain, and that measures the brain waves of a person, and you can see how the brain waves from the beta brainwave stage slow down and come down into the alpha brainwave state. And this technique, and all it is, it's a simple concentration technique. It's simply closing your eyes and visualizing yourself writing the numbers on a blackboard or a whiteboard or in the sand on a beach or something like that, writing the numbers from 24 down to 0. Seeing yourself write these numbers. That's all you got to do. But the trick is that any time you have an intervening thought in between the numbers of 24 and 0, then you stop the countdown, and then you go back to 24 and start again. And what I do is, if you're writing on a whiteboard, for example, you grab the whiteboard, the razor, you rub out all the numbers, and you start again at 24, and you start again, right again. And so every time you have an intervening thought in between the numbers of 24 and 0 is to stop, rub out all the numbers, start again. And if you can get from 24 all the way down to 0 without a single intervening thought, then you have moved the mind from the beta to the alpha brainwave state. And the alpha brainwave state is the state we are in when we're in flow. And we've all had it when we're working on something, and nothing else, everything else could be chaos around us, but we are so focused on what we're doing that we don't notice the phone ring, we don't notice the doorbell, we don't notice anything else around us. We're so focused, and that's the alpha brainwave state. And this technique, this concentration technique, works so well to bring the mind down. And if people did that, if they started their meditation with that, and then they went into meditating, it will be a lot easier for them. They get a lot more benefit. We have to slow the mind down first, though.
Really good tips, Adrian. I've never heard that technique before, but it sounds that it would work. Thanks for sharing that tip. In terms of, have you got any up and coming meditation courses or anything you'd like to share with the listeners that are probably really engaged with what you've shared today and would like to know how they can get in contact with you, or how they can become better meditators, or they might want some support around their anger management?
Yes, mate. I run 3 separate 4-lesson programs. So I run an anger management program. The anger management program deals with assertiveness training, deals with communication skills, touches on self-destructive beliefs and behaviours, which we built, like things like, this isn't fair, and things like, why do people drive like that? Why can't people drive more like me? And I should always win, and people should treat me fairly, and like all this negative stuff. So that's the anger management side of things. I also I touch on things like emotional and relationship abuse, which a lot of people are subjected to things like that, and they don't realise that they are. So that's the anger management. That's the anger management 4-lesson program. I've got the stress management area, and that goes into things like time management. time management is a beautiful one. If you can't manage your time and you're dancing from here to there and all over the place, you're getting stressed, that's no good. So time management's a big part of it. Time management, things like it goes into sleep, looking into your sleeping plans. It goes into, how important exercise and nutrition is. These are the things in the stress area. And the self-improvement area, that came along because I'd help people through the stress and through the anger. And then they'd say, well, what's next? So then I'd say, all right, well, you're going to have to improve yourself. Then I'd just say, let's move this way. So the self-improvement program looks at analysing your values, beliefs and principles, working out what they are, and then looking at your strengths and weaknesses and where you want to improve, looking at setting goals, use of affirmations and construction of affirmations to reinforce those goals, and also something called positive mental rehearsal, which is something I learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza. People might have heard of him. I've done a couple of his courses and very, very powerful stuff. And that's basically just shutting your eyes every day, visualizing yourself, visualizing the life, visualizing your goals as if you're already living them, right? As if they're already happening, but not just seeing them, but also feeling the feelings of already having them. And this is that's a part of the four lesson self-improvement program. So yeah, they're the three areas that I work in. I do the programs, but I also see people individually if they would like to, if they have something that's a bit different from the 4 lesson programs. And the 4 lesson programs also, I kind of tweak them a bit after I've met the person and they've started on that 4 lesson journey. Then I tweak them a bit to suit the individual anyway. So yeah. But that's and all they have to do, if they Google Adrian Spear, they'll find me. No problem.
Fantastic. And I'll have direct links to your website and contact details in the show notes. And any concluding thoughts you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
Thanks, Anthony. Look, everything that we have in life, I believe, everything is mind-made. I believe that 90% of all folks live below what they are capable of. And I believe that if you truly work on the mind, then I will go as far as to say almost everything is possible for you. And that's my closing thoughts. The mind, it all starts with mind.
Love it. Anything is possible. And for the listeners today, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up. And if you've really loved the episode, please like and share it so that more people can benefit from the wisdom that Adrian shared with us today. Thank you.